Hello everyone, welcome to Angular and Next.js tutorial. So basically Angular and Next.js both almost follow similar kind of features like components and sharing the data between the components, routing, state management and directives and all. So for that reason I decided to create this particular video and write the code side by side, both Angular and Next.js, and compare and contrast and see how close they are when it comes to the coding, and so that you can learn these two frameworks in single video. Okay, this is more of a coding rather than theoretical. So if you want to learn the theoretical topics, I have made separate playlist for Next.js and Angular in my YouTube channel. You can refer those videos. Thank you. Let's dive into it. We need a Node.js for both Angular and Next.js application. So right now I have Node version of 20. So this is sufficient for me to work on both Angular and Next projects. If you don't have Node.js installed on your computer, you can go to Nodejs website and download from here. Okay, once it is downloaded, you can go back and check the version here. Okay, right now I have version 20, so this is sufficient for me to start both Angular and Next.js projects. Let's start creating Angular application. So this is Angular website. To create a new application, we can go for ng new command. So ng new, I'll say ng project, or I'll say ng as an Angular project, and this particular property that we need to give standalone false from Angular 17 version onwards. Okay, otherwise it will consider like a standalone application. So this is how we can create the Angular application. So I just wanted to, for now I'll just keep it to CSS. I don't need server-side rendering. So this is creating Angular project right now. Since Angular is a framework, it will add some basic already whatever the minimal information that we needed, like for routing and for modules and all these things, it will be coming as part of the in a proper structure, and we use the Angular schematics along with this to generate the components or services or anything. Let's wait for it. So Angular project is created. Right now I'm in Angular project. So to start the Angular project, you should run ng-serve. So it will open in 4200 port. Okay, now let's go here, localhost 4200. So this is the basic Angular project that we got. Okay, now let's go to Next.js and create the Next.js project. So to create a Next.js project, we need to use this command. So in the same folder where I have Angular project, I am creating this Next.js project. Okay. So this is a command to create a Next.js. So I'll say nx for Next.js project or invalid project. Okay. Okay, I'll say Next.js. I want to use the Typescript, ESLint, Tailwind, SRC, app router, no customization. So we have a Next.js application ready. So I'm starting the Next.js application. So npm run dev is a command to run the Next.js application. It will open a 3000 port. So it will run on 3000 port by default. So now let's go to 3000 port. So now we have an Angular application, plain Angular application, plain Next.js application. Okay. Now let me open this code. So now I imported the Angular project to the left and Next.js project to the right in Visual Studio Code. Okay. So as a start, as a first step, let's try to understand the folder structure so that it will be much more easy. So if you see the Angular project, okay, where we have the major file where you see the package.json, okay, in Angular, and on the Next.js we have a package.json. Okay, so this is the name of the project, this is the name of the project, and this is a version. Okay, and the scripts, whatever the scripts that you are looking at, these are the scripts to run the application. Both Angular also it has scripts to start the Angular application locally. You need to run ngserve or npm run start, or you can say npm run dev. Npm run start Angular, npm run dev Next.js application. To build it, npm run build Angular application, npm run build, same for Next.js application. So these are the scripts that we use to run the application or to build the application. Same story with Next.js also. And the next thing is dependencies. Okay, when you look at the dependencies, this is the Next.js application, but it is internally using React. So for that reason, we got React and React DOM because it is majorly of a UI focused framework. And since it is a Next.js, we are using Next.js 14.2.3. And when it comes to the Angular, Angular is a complete framework. So that's why it came up with a core, forms module, router, and all these additional modules. Okay, and if you want to use any additional library like for state management like Redux, we need to make an entry of that specific library that we want to use within the dependencies here and here in both the applications. Okay, so dev dependencies, these are not mandatory and these are useful for development. So even without these dev dependencies, our application is still, it will still work in production application. Okay, this is the difference between the package.json on both the Next.js and Angular project. So the next piece is, if you see tsconfig and a tsconfig.js. Okay, in these two sides, left side is the Angular project. We will have in tsconfig.js file, we'll have a compiler options. Okay, Typescript compiler options, like when we start the application or run the application, how this compilation should work. So that is those specific configuration that we added in both same file names in Next.js and Angular, tsconfig.json, tsconfig.json. Okay, if you see the strict mode, if you say strict mode false, it won't force you to look at the TypeScript errors, and you can say strict mode false, it will force you to it won't alert you for TypeScript errors while writing the code. Okay, these two files are almost similar, and both are, the purpose of these two files is to provide the TypeScript configuration when you actually build the application for the build. Okay, so the next one is package log JSON. Package log we have in both Angular and Next.js. So basically this file, whatever the entries that we have in the package.json, all those entries and exact versions of those will be part of this package log.json. This is one of the important file. So to have the same dependency versions across develop region, test region, and production, so you should still keep this file and push it to the repository. Otherwise, if you delete it, there is a high possibility for version mismatches in development region, test region, and production. It will create the more problems. Okay, so this is one of the important file. Same goes to Angular. For the remaining files, if you want to know more about the leftover remaining files, you can refer my other YouTube videos that I made on Next.js and Angular for a detailed information. Okay, the next one is, if you see the public, okay, in this public in the Next.js, usually we keep all these static files like images or videos or those type of static content that we usually keep it in the public. The same equivalent for in Angular is assets. Okay, within the src assets folder, in this folder the same static files, images, videos, and all the static content will go inside assets folder under src for Angular, and within the Next.js it will directly go to the public folder. Okay, and the next important thing is, so you have a .next.angular here. Okay, when you actually run the application, it will include all the dependencies and everything to run our application in local. It will create this cache. The same thing goes to Next.js also. It is created a cache of the application to run it in your local. Okay, so the next one is node modules. Node modules in both the frameworks. So node modules, whatever the entries that we have as part of the package.json file, all those entries are going to be downloaded when you run the application in your local, and it will be placed inside node_modules file folder, and you can delete this folder and run npm install again. It will create this particular folder. Okay, and the most important folder is src folder. Okay, in Angular src folder, Next.js also src folder. This is where our actual content, actual component that we are going to write will go into this particular folder. Within this app folder in Angular, everything should go inside app folder. Okay, and here within the src, even the same thing goes to Next.js as well. Okay, but under app right now, under src, there are only couple of files in Next.js. Okay, the first one is the main page. Okay, the page.tsx that is loaded this particular page. Okay, the same equivalent page.tsx in Angular is app component.html. Okay, this is the same content that is displayed on the first page. Okay, so by default Next.js renders page.tsx, and Angular by default it will render app.component.html file. Okay, but when it comes to the difference between Angular and Next.js here is, for Angular we have separate HTML file, separate Typescript file, separate CSS file. But when it comes to the Next.js, there is only one file where we keep everything. Okay, all the HTML code as well as the JavaScript, TypeScript code and everything will go into the same file. That is the difference. Okay, now let me update the first page of the Angular and Next.js. Let me remove everything. All this content, this total content is not needed. We'll start type coding after we remove everything. Okay, I removed everything from Angular. It is empty right now. And in the Next.js also, I'm removing everything. Okay, now these two are empty. So the Next.js, okay, let me just remove this dark color also from the global CSS. Okay, now it is empty. It is empty. Okay, now let's write the code and understand both Angular and Next.js together. Okay, So one more important file that I need to talk about. So if you want to write the global CSS in Next.js, you have to keep those CSS in globals.css. At the same time, in Angular, if you want to write the global CSS, you need to keep it in styles.css. So these two are equivalent. These are global files, okay? Global CSS, okay? Now let's start writing Angular navigation code first, then we write the Next.js navigation code. So I will use command line since Angular has a schematics feature. So I'll use command line to create the components. Okay. For that, ng generate component. I want to create a header with the links. Okay. So I created a component, header component. Okay. To use this header component, all I need to do is, oh, this is a CSS file. Okay. So the main app file, this is the first file that is rendered. So to use it, all I need to do is create the component. Okay, when I run ng generate, it will create a component under app folder. Okay, ng generate component name. It will have CSS, HTML, spec and TS file. HTML file will have actual HTML content. TS file will have actual functions and events. CSS is specific to this particular component. If you want to write a custom CSS for this particular specific component, you can keep it in this particular CSS file. And the spec file is to write the test cases. So we can ignore for now. Now, after adding this app header, if you go and see, app header works. And within this app header, if you see, this is the content that we have. Now let's change this. I want to create a navigation bar. Okay. Within this, I will add anchor tag. I'll say home, login, and maybe a contact. Okay, now if you go and see, there are 3 navigation bar items. Okay, let me just add a CSS for this, just to push the content to center align. Okay, display flux, text align center, justify content center. So now the content is center aligned. Okay. So to add a navigation from one page to another page in Angular, okay, we use a thing called router link from the HTML. Okay. Here what we can say is home and a login, contact. Okay, but this will still not work. Okay, because we need to add the actual routing content. Okay, so to route, there is a file called app.approuting.module.ts. This is the important file. This is where we write the actual routing. Okay, but before that, currently we don't have these 2 components, login and contact. Okay, for that I'm going to generate 2 components. Okay, login and contact. So I'm creating 2 components to navigate to. Now I have 2 components ready. Okay, if you see, you can check within this contact and login. Okay, now within the app routing, within this, there is a property called path. This path should be this particular content that you see, this string without /. Okay, and what component it should load. Okay, it should load login component. Okay, so this is how you can import and write the routing in Angular. Okay, now let's validate. Okay, now I'm clicking login. See, login works. It navigated to login, and I'm clicking contact. Now it is navigated to contact. Okay, this is how you can write the navigation in Angular. Okay, the same thing. Now let's look at it in the Next.js, the same page routing. Okay, one page to another page navigation. Okay, now let me pull this to the left. Okay, so as a first step, I need to create navigation. For that, first I created a header on the Angular, right? So for that, I'm going to create a app header component. Okay, within the app, I'm creating a header.tsx. Okay, within this header, what I'll do is I'll add the same links. So this is a inbuilt link component that I am using. Okay, here you can give the path as login path. You can give a name login, and can add one more called contact and a root URL which is of home. Okay, so this is equivalent to this. Okay, navigation bar with 3 links. Okay, now let's check. So okay, now we have not even imported this to the into page.tsx. That's why it is not listed. And also we'll add a class called header CSS, and we'll make an entry of this in the global CSS. Okay, the same thing, display flex, we'll center align this. So text align center and a justify content center. Okay, this will center align the content like Angular. Now we will import this header here. Okay, now if you see, we got 3 links. The same way we got 3 links here. So we got 3 links here, but currently we don't have a login page and contact page. Okay, let's write those files. And now I imported a header component into the main page.tsx. Okay, and the same thing we have done in the app component as well in the Angular. If you see, within the app component, I imported the header component. This is how we import in Angular. This is how you import in Next.js. Okay, now let's add the routing. Okay, within the SRC, we need to create a so as the first step, within the SRC, we need to create a folder called pages. Okay, within this pages, I'm creating a file called login.tsx. Okay. Also, I'm creating one more file called contact.tsx. Okay. Now let me just copy, paste. I'll say contact. Let's just display something. Contact page. Okay, the same thing goes to login as well. Let's say login. Okay, now let's check the navigation. So when I click login, so sometimes this Next.js is not directly working. Okay, let me restart the Next.js application. It is not picking up the change updates right away. So now I restarted it. Yeah, now if you see, the routing is working. Okay, right now the main page we have a home login contact. When I click login, it is navigated to login page. When I click contact, it is navigated to contact. Let's go to Angular. When I click login, login works, contact works. Okay, this is how you can write the basic navigation from the HTML file in both Angular and Next.js. Okay. The next thing is, let's look at how we can route using from the Typescript file instead of navigating directly from the HTML. Okay. So let's start with Angular. Okay, instead of navigating from here, we'll add a button. Okay, navigate to, or directly I'll say login page and a contact page. Okay, when I click this button, I want to navigate. Okay, instead of clicking the actual link. Okay, so let me add a click event. So this is a function name. So go to contact. We need to write these two functions within the TS file. Okay, go to login and go to contact. So this is another way to route from the component instead of directly routing from the HTML. Okay, within this, if you want to use the routing within the constructor, okay, we need to import the router. So we need to import the Angular router component, which is of inbuilt Angular router. Okay, it is like use router in Next.js. Okay, so by using this router, when I click login, I'll use this router dot navigate, and within this I can give login. The same thing goes here, can give contact. Okay, Now let's validate. So now login works, it is navigated. Contact works, it is navigated to contact. Okay, this is how we can navigate from the TypeScript file instead of navigating from the HTML. Okay, now let's look at how we can navigate the same thing in Next.js. Okay, so for this I'll just copy these two buttons from Angular. Okay, here in the page.tsx, within here I'll add a div. Okay, this type of clicks won't work. So the on click event. Okay, and the same goes here. Okay, within this go to login, here go to contact. Now we need to add these two functions here. Okay, and the second one is go to contact. Within this, as a first step, we need to use router, which is of use router. Okay, and when you notice use router, this is of a router. Instead you need to use navigation because it is Next.js. Okay, so within here router dot push, and you can provide the URL login and contact. Now let's validate. Okay, what it is doing, saying, okay, it is asking, saying use the use client, otherwise it is, we are going with the client side. Okay, that is a directive. Now if you see, we have two buttons. This is not looking good. I will add a CSS. So I'm adding Tailwind CSS for this button. Okay, two buttons now I have. Okay, when I click login, it is navigated using router. When I click contact, it is navigated to contact. Okay, this is how you can add the routing in both Angular and Next.js. Okay, now let's write the logic to get hold of the parameters. For suppose if you have a contact with 1, 2, 3, how do you get hold of this and use it in the page? The same goes here. 1, 2, 3, how do you get hold of this and use it in the page? Okay, let's start with Angular. So first thing, to add that specific parameters, I'll say contact and ID. Okay, if you don't add this, it won't work. Okay, now the second step is, here we have a contact and we can say 123. Okay, let's check. So the contact is working because I added this parameter. Now let's get hold of this parameter and use it here. Okay, for this particular scenario, to get hold of that in the contact page, okay, since I am in the contact page, when I navigate to contact page, I want to get hold of this and display in the contact page. Okay, for that reason, as a first thing, so we need to add the constructor. So in Angular, there is something called activated route. Okay, which is of the current route in the browser. Okay, this particular route, activated route, will have, okay, route will have the parameter map. Okay, you need to subscribe to this parameter map. Okay, from this map you can get hold of the parameters. Now you can say, let me add id of any to get hold of this. This dot id equal to, so the parameter map dot get of id. Okay, this is how you can get hold of the parameter. The reason why I am using id, because I set it as id. Okay, for that reason, whatever the value that comes after contact, it will be assigned to id and it is picked up. And let me just display this id in here like this, in double curly braces, that we need to set. Okay, contact page id. Let's validate. If you see it, it is already picked up that number. Let me add. Okay, we got it. So when you go to contact to get hold of that parameter, okay, this is how you can get hold of the parameter in Angular. Okay, now let's go to Next.js. The same thing that we do in Next.js. Okay, so here in contact, I'll just pass same thing 1, 2, 3. Okay, within the contact, so if you want to pass a contact ID, this folder structure won't work directly. Okay, instead within this, we need to create a folder called contact. Okay, and this contact should go inside this contact folder, and since we are going to pass the ID, so it will be wrapped up like this, and it's not going to be the JS, it will be TS, or it will be JS or TS file. Okay, not the TSX file. Okay, now, okay, so now this is first thing. Okay, to get hold of the parameter, okay, to get hold of the parameter here, all I need to do is constant router, just go for the same use router. But like I said, okay, use router, and within this div, I'll just print it here. Contact ID is the ID. Okay, I need to get hold of this ID. Okay, here constant ID equal to router dot query. Okay, this is how you can get hold of the parameters in the Next.js. Okay, let's validate. So right now it won't work because there is no direct reference to contact. Now if you see, now the contact page, it is able to get hold of the parameter. So this is how the routing works in both Angular and Next.js. So now let's look at how we can pass the data from the parent to the child component in both Angular and Next.js. Okay. To start with, let's write the code in Angular, then we'll go to Next.js. Okay. So the first thing, like I said, I use command line for Angular to create a components. So I'll create a component called child. Okay, it is created a child component now. This one. Okay, I will import that child component in the main app component. Okay, now if you see, the child works. Okay, now if I want to pass a data to the child component from the parent in Angular, okay, let's start in the Typescript file. Let me just pass a single value, maybe content a string value, content from parent. Okay, I'll pass this content string to the child and display in the child. Okay, to display it in the child, we have to keep it in the brackets and the property here. Okay, whatever the property that we have here. Okay, now when let's go to app child now to get hold of this. So in the child component, here we need to use in the child component, we need to use input of the same property name. Okay, and import this input. So let me just add any type, any data type. Okay, to use this in the child, you can directly take this string and display in the child. This is how you can pass a string value from the parent to the child. Okay, what is this issue? Okay, it is input and content. This is correct. And this is correct. Okay. Now, if you see, this child component content is printed. If you want to check, so if you see, this content came from app child. Okay, not from the parent. Okay, this is passed to the child and the child printed the content here. Okay, now let's send multiple records instead of plain string. Okay, now this content we'll change it to list of states. Okay, like California, New York. Okay, I'll just pass these two values. App component, app HTML. Okay, here I'll change this property name to states. In the child also I need to change this to states. Now I got two states. Okay, now content is just, this is the states, it should be states. Now if you see, both the values are printed, two values. Okay, now let's make the same minor change to send objects instead of two different values, array of objects. Okay, so we'll say state California, state New York. Now I'm sending array of objects. Okay, now if you see, we got objects instead of actual value. To change that, so this states has array of objects. To display it, we can simply say Angular pipe that we can directly use. It will print like a JSON structure. Okay, or we can iterate using for loop. Okay, we can simply use for loop, like this is Angular 17 way of looping. So state of states and track state. Okay, if this list is empty, we can print something, states are empty. Okay, if there is a value, we can print it here in double curly braces, like state dot name. What is the property? Okay, state dot state. Okay, this is how we can loop through the records. Okay, let me just remove this JSON. So now if you see, we looped these two. Sorry, let me just cut this. Okay, we looped these two and displayed. Okay, this is how you can send the data from the parent to the child. Now let's look at the same thing in Next.js. Okay, the same parent to child. Okay, let's send the data from parent to the child in Next.js. Okay, so we'll create a page under pages called child.dsx. So let's keep this as it is. We'll write what we need to do in this. Okay, let's use this child and we'll pass the data from here. For now, I'll just get rid of these buttons. So this is the child. Okay, if you want to pass the data to the child, so here constant states, set states, and use state, and we can define same thing, California. We'll go for New Jersey. So now we have these two states available here. Okay, we can simply say states equal to, you can pass the states like this to the child. Okay, this is the first step. Right now we don't have a property to hold this content in the child. That's why it is throwing error. Okay, within the child, just pass this. Now no errors here, and within the child you got the states already. All you need to do is simply iterate. You no need to set it to any use state here. By default it is available through the props. So for that reason, so I wanted to, let me just push this content to center. What was the CSS? Okay, let's use the same CSS to push this content to center. Okay, so within this states dot map, this is how we should iterate the state, and here what we will do is we'll use the list item. Within the list item, state. This is how you can pass the data from the parent to the child in Next.js. Let's validate. Okay, this is how we should pass. Now it should work. Okay, now if you see California and New Jersey printed. Okay, so these two values, we got these two values from the parent, which is of page. Okay, we pass the values here. So now let's look at how we can send the data from the child to the parent in both Angular and Next.js. Okay, so let's start with Angular. Since we already have a child here, okay, let me start here. I'll add a button. So from the child we need to send the data to parent. Send to parent. Okay, I'll add a click function. Send the data to parent. Okay, and here I'll add this function. So in Angular, if you want to send the data from the child to the parent, we have to use something called event emitter. Okay, let's define this event emitter with output. So to get the data from the parent to child, we used input. Now we have to use output. Okay, so I'll add send data event, and it will be new event emitter. Okay, new event emitter, and we can, for now I don't want to mention the type, I'll just send whatever I want. If you want specific type, you can set it here. When I click this button on the UI, I want to send this data to the parent. Okay, I'll simply say message from child to parent. This message I want to send. Okay, now this is how we can send data. When I click this button, I want to send the data to the parent, but I need to get hold of the data on the parent, right? Okay, for that, use this particular name. Go to the app component HTML. Here you need to say This is the event, and get hold of that with the event. This is how you should tie this one with the child event emitter so that it will be tied. Once it is tied, you can copy this, go here, get that event. I'll just define a property called message of any. I want to assign the whatever the message that I got from the parent, from the child to the parent. I'll assign it to here, so that now I can use this in the parent, which is this. I'll display here. Okay, now let's validate this. So when I click this send to parent is part of the child. Okay, so this particular function button is part of the app child. When I click this the content should be coming and displaying on the parent. Okay, now if you see the message from child to the parent. Okay, let's inspect. If you see within the app child, this message is outside the app child. That means the message came from the child to the parent and displayed on the parent. Okay, so this is how you can send the data from the child to the parent. So all we need to do is create an output with event emitter, and you can give a name to that event emitter and call next, and you can send data, whether it can be a single string, boolean, or multiple objects, multiple arrays, anything. To get hold of this, use this name, go to the parent and set the same name here. This right side name can be anything, it's your wish, but this name should match. Then automatically whatever the event content that is sent, it will be tied to the $event. Okay, once you have this function here, and get hold of this and use it. So this is the way to send the data from the child to the parent in Angular. Let's look at it in Next.js. So to send the data from the child to the parent in Next.js, okay, let's add a button, send to parent. Okay, let's add on click, and within this say send data to parent, the function name. Within this, go here, async function. So in here what we need to do is, first thing we will get a event as a parameter to this. Okay, let me write it like this. Okay, within this let's let's prevent the event default function or default feature. Okay, let's prevent the default. Then now we'll add a function called onChange. Within this we will say send the message message from child to parent. Okay, but now we added the content in the child. Okay, now to get hold of this message, we should go to the parent. Also we need to add this along with states here. Okay, so that it will be available to the parent. So within the parent, here on change, here you can get hold of this. So okay, let's say child data I use, and within here I'll use child data comma set child data, and use state of null. And once I get the data, I'll print it here. Okay, same, almost similar to Angular. Okay, we added a button, on click event. We are calling this on change. Let's say message. Okay, so when we click it, it is going to on change. We have to pass the same on change here, or whatever the function name that you want to pass, and the same thing should be referred to the same child here, and the function name. This function will get whatever is passed from the child. Okay, since this is tied up here, by default child data will have the content. Okay, within this message, let's validate. Okay, so this is the button. Okay, so this is the button send to parent. When I click this button, I got this message from the child. Okay, so it is almost similar to Angular. This is how you can send the data from the child to the parent. Okay, so now let's look at how we can make the API call. Okay, before that I just wanted to clean up everything. So you need to use HTTP module. So it is HTTP. So HTTP client. Okay, but it is not sufficient enough to make the HTTP calls. Other than this, we should go to app.module.ts and make the entry of HTTP client module. Okay, this is needed. Without this, it won't work. Okay, now I have a HTTP call. HTTP. Now I can make the API call using this HTTP. Now within this constructor, this dot HTTP dot get, can pass the URL here, dot subscribe. You will get the response of data, and you can get hold of that. Okay, I'll say data of any, or we'll use a product dummy JSON product. This dot product equal to data. Okay, let's go to dummy JSON website. Okay, this is a dummy JSON website that I want to hit this API to get one specific phone details. Okay, I'll use this. Once I get this product data, I'll display product dot what fields are there? The title and description I'll print. Title hyphen description I want to print. Along with this, I just want to align this content to center. And I want to use this CSS to center line this content. Class div CSS. So within here, now if you see, I got this iPhone record from this API. Okay, iPhone 9 description, iPhone 9 description. Okay, let's try to get more records from this API. This is the API call. If I use without this, it will get all the records. It will become an array. So if it is array, I have to use the ng for and get the records. Okay, for now let it be. But this is how you can make the API call in Angular using client HTTP module. Now let's hit the same endpoint in Next.js and get the data. Okay, here for now let's get rid of this child content. Okay, so this is what we have. Within this home, I will remove this content also, just to make it a little bit cleaner. So to make the API call, you can directly use effect. And within this, we can make the API call. Okay, for that, I'll say fetch product async okay constant response data from the fetch API call. Here the fetch API call would be this to get one record. This is a fetch call. Once we get the data, constant data equal to response dot JSON. Because it is fetch call, we need to call the JSON method on top of this. Okay, other than this, I want to get hold of this product. So for that, I'll say product set product equal to use state of null for now. So once I get the product, I'll set this product data to this product. Okay, other than this, we'll call fetch product, and if it's nothing, let's say now to use this record in the page, let's use product dot title, product dot description. Let's see, I have a doubt whether it is working. Okay, there is, okay, let's check. I need to await. Okay, we'll set a loader along with this. So constant set loading. So initial value as true, it is loading. Once the data we got, set loading will become false. Along with this, if is loading, just return say still loading. Otherwise, if not product, no product data, now it should work. Yep. Now if you see, we made the API call using the fetch to this dummy API, and we got the data like Angular. Okay, this is how you can make the API call in Next.js. All I did was added use effect on the page load, getting the data and setting it in the page. That's all. It is as straightforward as it is. Now let's write a form and add the validations in both Angular and Next.js. Okay. Since I already have a login component here, let's use this login component and write the login form. Okay, in the login, the first thing that I need is, okay, to use the forms in Angular, the first step is in the app module along here, import the forms module and import the reactive forms module. Okay, then only forms works. Once this is done, now we go here and set the form group. This is how we define form in Angular. And along with this, I'll add a constructor, and within the constructor I need a form builder. Okay, along with this, so the form builder that I use to create the form, and let me add ng on init. Within the on init, I'll define this form with empty values. This dot form builder dot a group. Within this, I need to add, I'll add a username and the initial value as empty, and the validators dot required. So this is a required field. Okay, these are dynamic forms in Angular. I'll use a password, empty password. Okay, Along with this, when I submit this form, okay, all I want to is, all I can say, on submit of this form, I can get hold of it using console.log this dot form dot value. It will give a JSON structure of the content. Okay, so let's keep this here under. Now let's write the HTML. HTML point of view, again a form, it should be a form group, and the form name is, I'll just name it as a form, and when we submit, it should be ng submit, and I added already the method on submit. Here this on submit will be called. Okay, this is how you can create a form, simple form. Let me just add those two input controls. I'll add, so right now I'll just leave it like this. I'll add a label for username and a label for password. Along with the label, I'll use input type text, and the form control name, the username, so this form control name should be same as this. Okay, and along with this, I'll just add, don't need this, I think this is it. Let me add the password, the type password, and the field name is password. Now along with this, I need a submit button to submit this form. For that, I'll just keep this in the, so the button, I'll say submit form, or it is a login form, and for this form, okay, let's see whether it is working. Let me just push this content to center. So okay, so the now content is center aligned, but this is not looking good. I'll just get rid of this iPhone, this stuff from the app component. Let me remove this content. So now let's see whether this form is submitting. I'll say Shiva Kumar. When I log in, see, I'm able to submit the form, password and username. So these are the two values that I submitted. It is looking good. Okay, now let me add the validations. Okay, now we don't have validations. Let me add the validations for this same thing. So to add the validations, all I need to do is, after this, just leave out the alignments for now. This is not a CSS class, so here I'll say username is required. Same thing goes here. Password is required. So I wanted to show this in specific condition. So when I'll get hold of the form dot controls. So all the form parameters will be called as controls of username, this username, okay, dot dirty meaning just touched but not entered any content, okay, or other one is touched, okay. If it is touched meaning just clicked that and nothing entered, okay. And third scenario is and these two are OR condition. Let me just keep it in the OR. And this one is AND condition. Within this, if there are any errors, if so, check whether it is required, throw the error message. Okay, the same goes to password as well. Only difference is password, that's all. And the password is required. Let's see. This is how you should add the validations. But at the same time, you should have a required here, validators.required. Okay. Now to display this, let's go and check. Now if you see, when I touch it and not entered, it is throwing error message. As soon as I typed it, it is gone. Okay. This is how you can add the validation messages. Also, you can simply set some, style to show it in red color. Color maybe red. And we can style it whatever the way we want, but I'm just showing how we write the validations here. Nothing more than that, okay. Now when I touch, see, now it is throwing validations, okay, and now the validations are gone. Now it is submitted. Let's get the same form data and display it in the same screen. For that, form.value pipe of JSON, okay. This is a form, okay. Let's see. See, this is the plain form. Since Angular follows two-way data binding, as soon as you type it, it will automatically bind it to this. Okay, this is a form data. So this is how you can create a form and add the validations in Angular. Okay, now let's go to Next.js and write the same form and the validations in Next.js. Since we already have, so right now let me just get rid of all these things, use effect and all these things for now, since it is done. I'll just remove everything from the home. So let's add login here directly on the main page itself. Okay, let's write the login form in Next.js right now. Okay, so we need a form similar to Angular. Okay, along with this we need onSubmit function. It will, within the onSubmit function, we'll get the event. Within this event, okay, we need one more here. Okay, within this event will prevent the default and run the actual form submit. Okay, for that let's add onSubmit and we'll pass the form. To get hold of the form, we need a constant saying form and set form. Okay, and use state. Within this use state, since it is we are going to have a username and password, we'll say username empty. So the default values that we are referring here, and the password is empty, and we'll create an interface called form data. Okay, I'll create an interface form data, and I'll add a username of a string, password of string. Okay, now I have a form, initial form with these two values. Okay, the empty data. Along with this, I need a form submit function. So I'll have a async function. I'll use onSubmit. It will get hold of the form which is of form data. Okay, here we can perform the basic maybe console log of the data, of the form data, or we can one more thing do it like set form, and we can form this data so that we can print this form data on the page. Maybe under here form dot username hyphen form dot password. Okay, now let's write the actual form. So within this form we need two fields, one for input type text. Let me add a placeholder. It is username, and the value would be form dot username, and on change it should be the event that you get, and once you get the event, set it to form. Within this, 3 dots and the form comma event dot target dot value. Okay, here we need to set the property name. Okay, the form closure shouldn't be here. Form closure should be here. Or not. It's closed here. Closed here. On change event set form 3 dots and the form name. Oh, spelling mistake. Okay, so this is how you can. Okay, there is one more thing. We didn't close it. Okay, this is input type password. This is for password. Now let me add a submit button. Login. Okay, let me just push this total content to center. Class name. Let me use this one to center align the content. So now we have a form, Shiva, Kumar. Now you see, this is the data coming from the form. Okay, so this is how we can submit the form. When you submit, what I am doing, not only setting it to this, what we will do is we will also console dot table so that we can see it in the console. Okay, Shiva, Kumar, and when I log in, click login, see username and password. This is how you can submit the form in Next.js. So now let's add the validations for the same. Okay, let's add the validations for Next.js form. Okay, when we submit it, instead of directly getting hold of it, let's add the validations here. So I'll create a function called validate form. This function it will be constant validate form. Okay, within this I'll create an error object. It will have both the properties, username empty, password empty. This is the first thing. So the second thing is if form dot username, if it is not there, okay, error dot username equal to username is required. The same goes to password as well. The password is required. Let's validate. Okay, along with this, okay, I need to set this set these errors. I'll use something called errors set errors, and it can be any object. Okay, set errors at set error. So if there are any errors, we are setting it to set errors. Along with this, let's check whether form is valid or not. Okay, for that again I need one more use state. I'll say is form valid, set is form valid. By default I'll say it is as false value. Okay, this here object dot keys of errors, if there are any errors and its length equal to 0, then form is valid, otherwise invalid. And within here validate form. Okay, let's validate this and see. Okay, I think to display the message, error messages, we need to add something. Over here, errors dot, okay, it is error dot username dot username. If error username has it, then I'm setting this. Okay, I think it should work. Let's see the password and the password. Let's validate and check. Error is not defined. Okay. Oh, this is Angular. Okay. Errors. Oh, okay. Errors, 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 errors. Now if you see, I didn't enter anything. Okay. When I click login, it is throwing validation errors. Username is required, password is required. Okay. When I enter and login, it is successfully submitted. Okay. So this is how you can add the validations for form in Next.js.